Crisis management is sine qua non to human existence, and on that note, it is very important for us to have the ability and the wherewithal to manage crisis, no matter how little, how small it is to human existence. And on this basis, we will be continuing with our topic that we established last week, and that is collective bargaining crisis and the image of stakeholders. You welcome to your image, and I want to welcome my guest this week again. I have in the studios Mr. Larry Remy. Is a PR expert and a member of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, Ogun State Chapter. You are welcome this week again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Joining the conversation this week again is a management expert, is a brilliant administrator, is also a lecturer. Join me as I welcome Dr. Banji Akitude. You are welcome this week, sir.
Thank you very much.
I still have in the studio the Chairman of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, FUNAP Chapter, Dr. Adebayo Oni. You are welcome this week again, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Like I said earlier, we started this topic last week and by demand, and people said we should still bring up this topic because crisis is something that can destabilize a society, and ability to manage it lies on all of us. Let me start my conversation this week with Mr. Larry Remy from PR Perspective. Let me ask this. Why don't people want to honor agreement to start with?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I think nobody in his right senses will want to renege from honoring agreement reached into at a roundtable collective bargaining. And this also brings to the fore the function of PR practitioners in all organizations, whether in the banking, extractive, academia, to be up and doing. That is, if they are allowed to do their work, because PR is colored by what the chief executive says PR should be in most organizations. That is the unfortunate part of collective bargaining, because most of the time, when people go to the round table to bargain, you find out that the PR person is not always represented. And at the end of the day, they keep going in circles. Whereas, if a PR practitioner is within the theme of people at a collective bargaining process, they will be able to draw the attention of the stakeholders to the limit to which they could stand on their position. More often than not, you find out that when you enter a bargaining table, you have your position. But most labor unions who are bargaining on behalf of their members often fail to realize that when you get there with your position, it is what eventually comes out from collective decision-making process of bargaining that should determine where you should stand. And that has also been my own PR perspective. That people bargaining, labor union bargaining for their members, they should not be too rigid. That is one of the major problems that I see with the Nigerian labor unions, like NLC, like TUC, like all the other labor unions. And of course, the government is not exempted in this same situation. Government is even more guilty because most of the time, the labor union look up to the government to implement whatever they have jointly agreed. But when they now also renege, I mean, if the government renege, then the only language they understand is strike. And that's why you see labor union coming up with strike and strike and strike. Now, please, to run up what I'm trying to say, I think the government, for example, during this pandemic, when the economy of the whole world was shut down, the PR person on the side of government should be able to come up even before all the unions, especially in the academia, start agitating. Please, we know we have entered into an agreement, but with this force majeure, or a natural disaster called COVID-19, we may not be able to
do certain things.
Don't forget that as we were already on strike before
The
pandemic came, and we are using it as an example.
Okay.
And the pandemic also affected all other sectors of the Nigerian economy. So all PR people, if PR people were made to be part of the bargaining team, they should be able to say, look, we don't need to wait until the conflict rises to the crisis level. Don't forget that there is a crisis movement. It starts from a conflict. If you don't nip it in the bud, it gets to a crisis level. And when anything gets to a crisis level, nobody comes out the winner.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me go to Dr. Obanjaki today as a management expert now. What are the proper ways to manage crisis, especially when it comes to collective bargaining? Some people want to be selfish, you know. They want to allot so much to their sides. And some people may not want to shift grants. What should be the management process or the management approach to solving crisis?
You see, the first thing where the problem lies first started was issue of what is collective bargaining and why are we undertaking it? Are we undertaking this process as a gift? We want to give people something. Is it a welfare matter or an investment? As soon as you are seeing it as, you see, I have 10,000 and they're asking 15,000, of course, conflict already started. But when you know that, you see, it is in management, you have the 3 M's. Human being is part of the input. And you look at it as a business. You are investing in order for you to get something in return. So when you look at it that way, it becomes easier. Now, we will no longer be thinking about, okay, we don't have what you're asking for. We are going to be talking as business people. You are asking for this on basis of what? For what? That's why where collective bargaining is probably entrenched, most of the time it will become productivity bargaining. That is, we are investing this much in terms of labor cost. What are we supposed to get from it?
In return?
Yes, if we do this, this will happen. From this that happen, what should be our portion? It becomes easier. The second aspect is the framework. Collective bargaining is supposed to come up within a structure. We call it procedural agreement. Agreement for reaching agreement. Most times, it's not there. If it is there, it's not respected at all. And when those things begin to happen, there are 2 things that often happen. Either we don't have professionals. This thing is technical. We don't have professionals, or professionals do not follow, or they are not allowed.
Please let me interject.
Follow,
Let me interject. Do we have professional trade unionists?
Yes, we have professional trade unionists. Okay. That's part of the problem of most unions. In the private sector, most of those unions have professional secretariat.
Okay.
We have the elected representative who come from different backgrounds. They are there based on popularity election. There are people who are employed for their knowledge of industrial relations. We have that in the most unions, and where you have that, you have less problem. The same thing applies to the civil service, to government. Because in most government institutions, when they want to staff that function, they don't look at who has the qualification, who has the professional competence. It's just like, just transfer. We want to do the shopping. Okay, let this one go here. Not, is this person knowledgeable in it? Like in Ministry of Establishment, Bureau of Establishment, it should be headed by a professional. In fact, if you go to Lagos State, for example, the bureau is a full-fledged ministry headed by a professional. All persons in charge of administration and personnel management in Lagos State Civil Service, they are chartered human resource practitioners. So it is easy for them to understand the process, to embrace the process, to manage the process. Okay. But because of that ignorance, You see, anytime there is a strike, there has been problem of people mismanaging the process. Because strike was never meant to be. Strike was supposed to be something to make you prevent strike. They want to strike. That's quickly what we need to do.
So it should be prevented.
So, but each time when we have strike, most times there have been repeated reminder calls. And when we have what they call ultimatum, it is seen as confrontation rather than last minute attempt to avoid conflicts. So, and when you allow union from management perspective to take initiatives when it comes to condition of service, then you have lost it. Because whatever you invested in that, we regard it as an investment. Salary is an investment. So whatever you invest is a waste, because people will see it as we struggle for it.
I'll come back to. So let me quickly take on Dr. Adebayo. When you get to negotiation table, I don't want to use some win. I don't want to use language loose because they are negotiating. Because when they shift grant, of course, we want a better welfare for the people. I mean, when government, for instance, shifts grant, that means you still care for the people. But the problem now is this. When government shifts grant or unions shift grant, should that be seen as an act of cowardice? People see it like that. What's your opinion as a unionist?
Well, thank you very much. The process of collective bargaining itself impose both obligations and responsibilities on both the employer and the employees. And so whatever you want to bring out of the collective bargaining process would also be a function of, just like you said, the team that actually go there to negotiate on your behalf. If you have gone there with amateurs, probably people that are not well grounded, that are not well versed in engagements, then it's possible that you will come out of that process being shortchanged. And at the end of the day, don't forget that as a trade union, you have your members. So your members may see you as having gone to that place to go and do what? To go and betray them. But let me say that a fundamental issue in the collective bargaining process is the principle of equality. Equality of both the employer team and the employee team. More often than not, you have crisis in the process of collective bargaining when the employer comes from the point of I am higher than you and wants to be dictating the terms and conditions of the discussion or of the engagement. So in the process, that bargaining, collective bargaining will break down. Especially when on the part of the employee, you have seasoned and experienced representatives who actually know the process of engagement. So some of these things, of course, our union experienced it with the dissolved the negotiation team led by Wale Babalaki. Because the point of disagreement for a renegotiation team who are supposed to go into a collective bargaining process with a trade union for over 3 years, 3.5 years, and you couldn't get an agreement out, was the fact that he comes to the collective bargaining table with I'm higher than you and wants to come and impose his opinion.
So ego comes in.
Yes, he wants to impose his opinion. Even when a subcommittee consisting of his own team and that of the union comes with a report, he sets aside the report and says, I have my own opinion. And the union will say, no, we are all equal partners. You cannot impose your opinion or not. So the negotiation team was not, the bargaining was not moving. And that was what led to that crisis. It's not only our union, other trade unions also experience it. But more often than not, the moment an agreement is signed, an agreement will be a product of some level of compromise. So every party should know that we are going into this discussion not from the point of rigidity. You have to shift in some areas
Okay.
based on the reality
On ground.
on ground.
Okay. Okay.
So having been able to go through all those shifts, compromise and all those things, you then sign, then the government team now refused to still honor the agreement. And I think that has always been compounding our trade union engagement, and that is where you will see strikes, which are also part of picketing. Even if it is not complete strike, you see picketing, protesting, doing rallies,
Or sit-down strike.
And all those things. So just to press home their demands.
All right, you're still watching Your Image, collective bargaining crisis, and of course, the image of stakeholders. That is what we're talking about on this show today. Let me go back to Mr. Iremi. Information is very, very important in every situation. When there are crises like that, don't you think that these unionists oftentimes don't give out information to the people so that they could, of course, have trust in them?
Well, thank you very much. I think the place of information in collective bargaining cannot be overemphasized. And that is where the PR person comes to the fore. And like my colleagues who are here, from the management perspective, from the labor union perspective, if I may ask, has there been any time they are going for engagement, negotiation, where they incorporate a PR person from their place of work in the negotiation process? My answer is, most of the time, they don't always involve them. And then, like he said, it's a question of allowing the professionals. The PR person is a crisis manager. He knows what to say, he knows what not to say, he knows what to channel, he knows what channel PR media to use to communicate to the various stakeholders. But more often than not, you find that even the function of the PR is subsumed under other paraphernalia of offices.
Or the CEO.
Or the CEO, like I said earlier, that the CEO determines the coloration of public relations in the Nigerian environment. Unlike in senior climes, like in developed economy, where professional PR are recognized for their role as PR people in terms of the function of the image. Whatever decision you take, the PR man is interested in what will resonate as a result of this decision in terms of the image it will cost the organization or it will cost all stakeholders. When you talk about stakeholders, most of the time in labor relations, is the employees and their unions and the employer and their supervisory agencies, the MDAs. And at the end of the day, you find out that this ego thing, like what Dr. Oni said, somebody seeing the employer as an underdog, employee as an underdog to the employer, is wrong. And so, if a PR person is there, it will quickly raise the red flag that, Mr. Man, you have gone beyond.
Dangerous.
It's dangerous. You cannot see other entities between which we are discussing the welfare of the workforce as your underdog. You have equal status when you are sitting on the round table to talk.
Okay, I want to go practical now. I know you want to say something, but before you say, let me go practical. Now there is increase in pump price in Nigeria today, and some other things have even skyrocketed. The labor union seems not to do anything. Pump price. What do you think should be the role of NLC to be specific and TUC, who are supposed to be the at least the bodies that should assuage the feelings of Nigeria? Nothing is happening from the management perspective. What's your role?
You see, union is first of all an economic institution. and is supposed to think like a manager, an economist. They are supposed to do research to know the extent to which the subsidy in quote it exists. To what extent is it justified? To what extent is the pump price increase justified? These are the facts it's supposed to continually generate and make it the basis of proactive demand. You see, not even as somebody who is outside, but somebody who is part and parcel of the management of the organization. You see, that is where I'm coming back to the first question you asked about concession, giving. You see, it is this mentality that is causing problem. When you see us yielding to you or you yielding to us, win and lose, it should not be. It is economic, managerial matter that is subject to some scientific principles. You see, you don't just say, give me this amount. There must be a justification.
For it.
For it. It is more of a proposal for joint benefit, that if management do this, this will result. And from this result, you justify it to be seen. You see, every management wants optimal corporate performance. That's the language they want. And every worker wants increase. If union do research, know the corporate goals, and construct it in a way that will maximize the benefit of both parties, and put that as a practical proposal, every man will want to listen. See, now, you can go to bargaining table from different perspectives. You can go as a party who has common interests with the organization as the survival of the organization is concerned. Or you can go as somebody who's not interested in what happened to the organization. I just want my demand, give me. Management also too can look at union like that. They are just people who want to minimize our profitability. But we have what they call integrative bargaining. Bargaining based on the fact that we have one goal. If this organization collapses now, where would the union be? Now, if the worker is not there, where is, so it should be, it's not a question of, you see, like, look at the example of minimum wage. Minimum wage is supposed to be a wage for ensuring minimum condition of service or minimum standard of living.
For people.
For people. So you work based on that. Not just like, I want to give it, or you want to give me. No, it's not giving.
Okay.
It's a scientific process.
All right. Dr. Akinde, because of our time, if we are asked to advise the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as far as the labor issue is concerned and collective bargaining, in few seconds, what will be your advice to government?
Now, number one, engage professionals. Okay. All position that has to do with managing human resources must not just be given to anybody. You see places where engineers are in charge of management of human resources is wrong. Okay. Two is they should be proactive about condition of service of workers, and make it a form of productivity bargaining long before they think about it. Let it be the one they should be the one initiating and giving condition whereby the common objective will be achieved.
All right, thank you very much. And Dr. Oni, as a unionist, ASUU, your opinion, your advice to government in a few seconds.
Well, my advice to government is to ensure that trust is built. And where trust breaks down, arising from continued repudiation of a collective bargaining agreement between the employer and employee, that crisis of confidence is usually very difficult to handle. Even when everybody knows that the situation is bad and we need to review this thing, because there's lack of trust.
Lack of trust.
The labor unions will stick to their guns.
All right. Finally, as an information management person, in a few seconds, Mr. Remy, please.
Thank you very much. I think from the perspective of public relations, the PR person should be part of the collective bargaining process right from the beginning, through the middle, to the end, during when collective bargaining is going on. And don't forget that issues are usually triggered off during collective bargaining.
Okay, sir.
The PR person is an issue management manager.
All right.
Should be able, and government should not be too rigid. Neither should labor union also be too rigid.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm sure you enjoy my guest this week, collective bargaining crisis and the image of stakeholders. This is where we shall be running off on this week's edition of Your Image. Many thanks to my guest, Mr. Larry Remy, PR expert. Thank you very much for being part of our show.
My pleasure.
Dr. Banji Akintunde is also a management expert. Thank you very much. We appreciate your being on this. And Dr. Oni, who is the chairman of ASU, FUNAP chapter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Until we meet next week for another well-packaged edition of Your Image. Let's get rid of crisis in Nigeria so that Nigeria can move forward. See you next week.